The next morning didn't start with a meeting. That was intentional. Instead of gathering everyone into one room, the mentors did something new. They spread out. Jonah stood near the center walkway and watched people drift toward what pulled them, not what was assigned. One person wandered toward the garden, hands already moving as if they knew the work. Another lingered near the workshop, touching tools without picking one up. A few hovered near the main hall, unsure. Jonah raised his voice just enough to carry. No one here has to become one thing, he said. Some of you will do three small things a day, some one deep thing, some will change every week. That's not confusion. That's learning who you are without pressure. That landed. Lena opened the side building that had been sitting unused. Inside, sound panels lined the walls. A small but solid music booth stood in the corner, microphones set, cables coiled neatly, speakers mounted high enough to feel but not overwhelm. This is open, she said simply. No auditions, no judgment. Music, spoken word, silence if you need it. A teenager who barely spoke froze in the doorway. I write, he said quietly, but I don't show anyone. You don't have to, Lena replied, but you can. Across the way, Rhea unlocked another space. Long tables, paper, pencils, whiteboards covered in half erased thoughts. Writing class, she said. Not grammar. Thinking, telling your own story without it being taken from you. Someone laughed nervously. I don't know what I'm passionate about. Jonah nodded. Then today, your passion is trying. By mid morning, the ranch sounded different. Not louder, layered. A low beat pulsed faintly from the studio. Laughter broke out near the art tables where charcoal smeared hands and faces alike. In the writing room, silence held thick and focused, punctuated by the scratch of pencils and the occasional deep breath. Eli walked alongside a man who kept switching stations. 10 minutes here, 20 there. You don't have to pick, Eli told him. Your nervous system is testing safety. Let it. That was the lesson woven through everything now. Passion wasn't productivity, it was regulation. When people were allowed to engage with what steadied them, work came easier later. After lunch, they introduced something radical in its simplicity: personal daily blends, not schedules, menus. Jonah explained it one on one, again and again. You choose one thing that earns, one thing that heals, one thing that expresses. Some days they're the same thing, some days they're not. A woman who loved cooking but also wrote poetry smiled for the first time. I thought I had to choose. No, Jonah said. You had to survive. Now you get to live. In the music booth, the teenager finally pressed record. His voice shook. He stopped halfway through. No rush, Lena said through the glass. Your voice doesn't owe anyone consistency yet. That afternoon, speakers were rolled outside. Not for performance, for sharing space. Someone played a rough melody. Someone else painted while listening. A small group wrote lyrics together, arguing gently over a single line for 20 minutes like it mattered, because it did. As evening came, Jonah noticed something critical. No one asked, is this allowed? That question had disappeared. Instead, people asked, can you walk with me while I try this? And the answer was always yes. Later, as lights dimmed and the music softened, Nora sat beside Jonah again. They're not just learning skills, she said. He nodded. They're remembering themselves. Inside the studio, a final note faded. Outside, someone taped their first written page to the wall, not as proof, just as presence. The system hadn't fractured by honoring difference. It had stabilized. Because when people are allowed to build from their passion, even in fragments, they stop feeling like broken versions of someone else and start becoming whole versions of themselves. And that was the kind of wealth that multiplied without force. The music mentor arrived without announcement. Jonah noticed him because the sound changed. It wasn't louder or cleaner. It was anchored. The kind of sound that made people pause mid-step and look around without knowing why. A slow rhythm rolled out of the studio, steady enough to calm the room, alive enough to pull people closer. The man stepped out a few minutes later, mid-30s, worn boots, calm eyes. He carried himself like someone who had survived noise and chosen quiet on purpose. Name's Marek, he said, setting a case down gently. I was told this place listens. Lena smiled. We do. Marek didn't teach by lecturing. He sat beside people, adjusted a mic without comment, asked questions instead of giving instructions. What does this song want to be? he asked the teenager who barely finished his first recording the night before. I don't know, the kid admitted. Good, Marek said. Then you're not forcing it. By noon, the studio felt less like a room and more like a pulse point. Speakers were tuned properly now, warm, not sharp. Music wasn't a performance anymore. It was regulation, expression, practice. Meanwhile, something else stirred at the far edge of the land. A pickup rolled in, followed by a trailer. Cages, not tight, not cruel, just temporary. Dogs, a couple goats, and one stubborn donkey that refused to unload. This is Ruth, Eli said, helping her down. She runs an animal rescue. Needed space. Ruth knelt immediately, eye level with a trembling dog. You're safe, she whispered, like she meant it for herself too. They didn't make a program out of it. They just made room. Animals changed the place fast. People who struggled to talk found it easier to brush fur, clean stalls, refill bowls. Routine returned through care. Trust returned through touch that didn't demand anything back. Later that afternoon, dust rose from the road down the hill. Engines. Not chaos. Controlled release. Jonah walked down with a few others and found a wide stretch of land already being shaped. Dirt bikes, old trucks, a couple beat up cars that had clearly lived full lives, barriers placed carefully, safety signs hand painted, not corporate. Fun is part of stability, Eli said, watching a young man grin for the first time while revving an engine. So is speed when it's chosen. They didn't let recklessness take over. Helmets were non negotiable. Mentors rode first, showing respect for the machines, not dominance. Laughter cut through the air in a way that felt earned, not desperate. Back at the ranch, the soundscape layered again. Engines in the distance, music humming steady, animals settling, pencils scratching, paint drying. Marek stood beside Jonah as the sun dipped low. You know, he said, most places use music to escape. Jonah nodded. You're using it to arrive. Ruth passed by with a leash in one hand and a schedule in the other. Animals need consistency, she said. Funny how much that teaches people. As evening fell, a group gathered between the studio and the animal pens. Someone played guitar. A dog slept at their feet. Dust still clung to boots from the track. Nora leaned against Jonah. This feels like a real place now. It always was, Jonah said. We just let it breathe. No one was being fixed. No one was being rushed. They were working, creating, caring, playing. And for the first time, fun wasn't a reward for survival. It was part of the system. That night didn't wind down the way most nights used to. No clear ending. No signal to stop. People drifted instead. Away from engines, away from speakers, toward whatever still felt alive in them. Marek stayed in the studio long after others left. He didn't record anything. He just listened, headphones on, eyes closed, letting the room hold silence between sounds. When the teenager came back in, unsure, Marek didn't look up. You don't have to feel it, he said. Silence teaches timing. The kid nodded, relieved. Near the animal pens, Ruth sat on an overturned bucket, brushing the donkey slow and steady. A man who'd barely spoken since arriving leaned against the fence. He won't let anyone rush him, the man said. Ruth smiled. Neither should you. Down the road, the engines finally cut. Dust settled. Helmets came off. People were flushed, not wired, just awake. Eli walked the track one last time, checking ruts, smoothing edges. Fun doesn't mean careless, he reminded them. It means safe enough to come back tomorrow. Back at the main hall, Jonah gathered a small group, not a meeting, just a check-in. Today mattered, he said, not because of what we added, but because of what we allowed. What if someone just wants to do this? A woman asked, gesturing vaguely. Music, animals, art, engines, and never the income side, Jonah answered honestly. Then we help them connect passion to contribution at their pace. Not everything has to monetize immediately. Stability comes first. Lena added, but everyone contributes something. Presence counts, care counts, learning counts. That settled it. Later, as lights dimmed across the land, Mark stepped outside and listened again. Not to music this time, but to the place itself. You've got a rhythm here, he told Jonah. Not perfect, human. Jonah watched a group walking back from the track, laughing softly, animals shifting in their pens, the studio lights finally going dark. We're building a life people don't need to escape from, he said. Marek nodded. That's rare. Before sleep, Jonah wrote one more note. Not policy, not strategy. Passion stabilizes before profit. Play prevents collapse. Care teaches responsibility faster than rules. The day didn't close with applause or declarations. It closed with doors shutting gently, lights clicking off one by one, and people going to sleep tired in the right way. Tomorrow would bring new friction, new learning, new people. But tonight the system held, not because it controlled people, but because it finally made room for who they already were. The drama didn't announce itself. It arrived quietly, out of rhythm. Jonah felt it before he saw it. The land was too still for that hour. No engines warming, no low hum from the studio. Even the animals were unsettled, standing instead of resting, ears alert, bodies angled toward the road. Then the sound came. Not music, not engines, sirens. They were distant at first, echoing off the hills, but they were moving closer, fast, purposeful, more than one. People emerged from buildings instinctively. No panic yet, just confusion. Marek stepped out of the studio. Ruth froze mid-step near the pins. Eli was already jogging toward the road. Jonah raised his hand. Not a command, an anchor. Everyone stay where you are, he said calmly. Mentors, eyes open. The vehicles appeared moments later. Police, 3 of them. Lights cutting through the dark like accusations. A murmur rippled through the group. Old fear surfaced fast, the kind that lives in the body, not the mind. Shoulders tightened. Breathing changed. Someone whispered, "They're here for us." Nora moved closer to Jonah without thinking. The cars stopped at the edge of the property. Doors opened slowly. An officer stepped forward. "We've had reports," he said, voice neutral but firm. "Noise, vehicles, possible illegal activity." Jonah met him halfway, hands visible, posture steady. "This is a private property," he said. "Everything here is permitted. Safety protocols are in place." The officer glanced past him, at the people, the animals, the buildings, the speakers, the track in the distance. His eyes lingered on the dirt bikes, then the animals. "What kind of operation is this?" he asked. Before Jonah could answer, a voice cracked from behind. A man stepped forward, the same one who had once needed reminders to show up. His hands shook, but he didn't stop walking. "It's not an operation," he said. "It's a place where people don't fall apart." Jonah's heart sank and lifted at the same time. This was dangerous, also unavoidable. Another officer spoke up. "Sir, step back." Jonah turned slightly. "It's okay," he said softly to the man. "Stand with me." More people came forward. Not rushing, not aggressive, just present. Marek, Ruth, Lena, Eli. Quiet solidarity, no fists, no shouting. The lead officer's radio crackled. He listened, frowned. "There's more," he said. "We received a welfare call. Not claim says minors are living here without proper guardianship." Everything stopped. Jonah felt the weight of it instantly. The younger ones, the siblings, the ones who had finally slept without fear. Nora's hand tightened around his sleeve. "That's false," Lena said sharply, then caught herself and steadied. "They are safe. They are cared for." The officer nodded once. "Then we need to verify." Old trauma surged through the group like electricity. People shifted. A dog barked sharply, then went silent when Ruth knelt beside it. Jonah inhaled slowly. "This is where it matters," he said quietly to his people, not the officers. "We don't run. We don't hide. We stay transparent." He turned back to the officers. "You can see everything," he said, "but you walk with us, not through us." The lead officer studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. "All right." They walked together, past the studio, past the art tables, past the animals, past the sleeping quarters. The officers asked questions. People answered honestly. No rehearsed stories, no fear-based compliance. When they reached the children's space, one of the younger girls stepped out, rubbing her eyes. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Jonah crouched immediately. "No," he said gently. "Just people making sure everyone's okay." She looked at the officers, then back at Jonah. "We are okay," she said plainly. "This is home." Silence followed. One officer looked away first. The lead officer cleared his throat. "We'll need to file a report," he said. "But I don't see neglect here." Jonah nodded. "You won't." As the vehicles finally pulled away, no one cheered. No one celebrated. People just stood there, shaking, breathing, processing. Marek broke the silence softly. "That," he said, "is why presence matters." Ruth wiped her eyes. "They tried to pull the ground out from under us." Jonah looked around at the people who hadn't scattered, hadn't collapsed, hadn't reverted. "They didn't," he said, "because the ground is real now." But he knew something else too. This wouldn't be the last test. When you build something that actually works, something that lifts people quietly, someone always comes to question it. And next time, the stakes might be higher. The night didn't reset after the sirens left. No one went back to sleep right away. People gathered in small clusters, voices low, bodies still humming with leftover adrenaline. Old instincts had been stirred flight, collapse, submission. But something new had held them upright. Jonah waited until the shaking passed. Then he spoke. That scare was real, he said, and it won't be the last. So we don't rely on luck or explanations anymore. We build protection the same way we build everything else, together, transparent, calm. They didn't call it security at first. That word carried too much history, too much force. They called it presence systems. Eli was the first to step forward. We don't need guards, he said. We need visibility and response. Marek nodded, and signals. Sound isn't just music. By morning, still the same chapter, the same stretch of days, they started mapping. Not fences first, awareness first. They walked the perimeter together, daylight revealing blind spots they hadn't noticed before. Long sight lines, natural barriers, places where sound carried, places where it didn't. The land itself became part of the system. Rhea sketched while they walked. Layered, she said, nothing aggressive, nothing hidden. The first layer was people, a rotating presence schedule, not watches, not patrols. Just awake, visible humans at predictable times, two at a time, always paired. No one alone with authority. Presence without intimidation. The second layer was light. Soft, solar powered lights placed along pathways and entry points, not blinding, not harsh, just enough to say, this place is aware, dark enough to stay human. The third layer was sound. Marek wired the studio speakers into an alert system, not alarms, tones, distinct, calm, unmistakable. One tone for arrivals, one for emergencies, one for gathering. No panic sounds, he said firmly. Panic trains panic. The fourth layer was communication. Simple radios, shared channels, clear language rules, no codes that excluded people. If something happened, anyone could understand what was being said. Ruth added the animals into the design without dramatizing it. They already know before we do, she said. Dogs positioned near entry paths. Not attack trained, alert trained. Bark meant someone's here, not someone's enemy. And finally, the most important layer, transparency. A public facing board near the entrance. Who they were, what they did, who to contact. Rules posted plainly. No mystery. No secrecy for suspicion to grow in. Jonah stood back as it came together. No one took control. No one acted afraid. The system didn't harden the place. It settled it. That evening, Nora watched the lights flicker on as the sun dipped. It feels safer, she said. Because it is, Jonah replied, and because it doesn't feel like a cage. A man who had once flinched at uniforms adjusted a radio at his belt and smiled faintly. I like knowing what to do, he said, instead of just freezing. Later, they ran a quiet drill. No shouting, no urgency, just movement. Gathering, communication, resolution. It worked. Not perfectly, but honestly. As night returned, Jonah wrote again, slower this time. Security isn't force, it's clarity. Safety isn't isolation, it's coordination. Protection works best when everyone belongs to it. The scare had tested them. The response had strengthened them. And now, if someone came again, not to understand, not to ask, but to disrupt, they wouldn't meet fear. They would meet a community that knew exactly who it was, how it functioned, and how to stand without becoming what once harmed them. The system didn't just help people survive, it taught them how to hold ground together.